Okay, welcome everybody to our webinar today on using marketing automation to drive e-commerce lift. My name is Scott Frymire. I'm with the marketing team here at Unilog, joined with some friends of ours today from Real Results Marketing and Act On Software. I'm going to introduce those guys in just a bit, but thank you for taking time out of your busy day today to join us. I'm just looking at the attendee list here. I see a number of Unilog customers on the call today. That's fantastic. I also see a large number of people who probably have no idea who Unilog is. So as the host of this presentation today, I'll just say very quickly, if you're not familiar with us, Unilog is an e-commerce platform for the B2B marketplace. Okay, we do e-commerce solutions as well as data catalog enrichment services. I'm not going to talk too much about that now. We're gonna give a high-level overview of Unilog later in the presentation today. But as they say in journalism, don't bury the lead. So I will not. We're here to talk today about using marketing automation to drive e-commerce lift. Specifically, we're going to go through some distributor marketing strategies. We have some good data here, recent data on what other distributors are doing within their marketing teams to drive interaction and engagement with their market. We're going to define marketing automation for you guys in case you're not too familiar with the topic. Talk through some of the features and benefits of the strategy of marketing automation. Let's see. We're also going to talk about how to get started with marketing automation, what it costs, and how you can get going. Hey, listen. At the end of this, we're going to have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions along the way, the best thing to do is go ahead and submit those questions at any time via the GoToWebinar panel, which is probably on the right-hand side of your screen. And we'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can. Again, at the Q&A at the end, for some reason, if we don't get to your question on this call, we will certainly follow up with you afterwards. All right. So to help me present this information today, I have a couple guests. One is Jonathan Bein from Real Results Marketing, which is a marketing strategy and execution firm that focuses solely on the distribution industry. So Jonathan has a lot of great experience working in the B2B market space, specifically with wholesale distributors. We have Scott Alder with Act On Software, which is a marketing automation platform for some fast-growing companies. Myself, again, Scott Frymire, SVP of Marketing at Unilog. I will not be speaking too much today. I'm going to turn a lot of the presentation over to Jonathan and Scott, and they can go through, and I'll chime in every now and then, but I think these guys have a lot of good information to share with you. And again, I do recommend you submit questions when you can, and we'll try to make this as interactive as possible, even though your audio lines are muted today. Okay, let's start things off with a quick poll if we could. So I'm going to launch a poll here on the in your GoToWebinar panel. Hopefully you will see this. We're going to ask you guys a question here. How would you rate your current level of maturity when it comes to marketing automation? We have some options there for you. You can read through. But if you want to go ahead, I see the responses coming in now. So I'll give it just a second for you guys to engage here. We'll warm you all up, get you interacting with the GoToWebinar, and it looks like we're getting some great responses here. Okay. So I'm going to close this poll now. It looks like most of the responses are in. Hopefully you guys can see the responses as they're coming in. Most of the people are saying, I'd say the majority of the respondents are saying that we're thinking about it, but you haven't actually implemented a marketing automation solution yet, which is probably why you're here today. Okay, so listen, to take us through a lot of the presentation, I'm going to turn things over to Jonathan from Real Results Marketing. Jonathan, welcome to the webinar today, and why don't you go ahead and talk to us about give us your insight on marketing automation.
Thanks, Scott. We work with a number of distributors on marketing programs, generating revenue and generating profits. So we have a good perspective on what the industry is doing. If we take a look at the next slide, we've done a benchmark on what distributors are doing with marketing in general. What kind of vehicles are they using? Can we advance to the next slide? There we go. Yeah, if you take a look at this slide, we looked at what distributors consider important in terms of marketing vehicles. So at the low end there, you see things like traditional media, display merchandising, trade shows. But then if you look all the way over at the left, you see email, you see search engine marketing that they consider to be either very important or important. One of the other things that we have seen in doing benchmarking on distributor best practices is that the best distributors do the same things as other distributors, but they do them more intensively. Here's what I mean when I say they do them more intensively. If we look at search engine marketing, email, social media, pretty much most of you are doing something in that realm. However, you may be doing it less frequently, you may be doing it even sporadically. The people that are doing this and getting the best results are doing it more intensively and more actively. And that means they're doing it at least weekly, potentially daily for social media, email, and search engine marketing. If we look at this topic of email marketing, if you're doing it intensively and you want to get these really powerful results, here's a couple things to know. First, most of your customers are getting touched primarily by field sales or inside sales. So if we look at a Pareto principle, 20% of your customers are getting a sales touch. If you look at the rest of your customer base, however, they may not be getting much proactive interaction from you. They might be getting an occasional announcement. They might be getting notice for a trade show, maybe some kind of training thing. But really, how can you start to build awareness of your website? And how can you do that in a way that touches different segments? In the traditional email marketing approach, it's pretty much one size fits all. You send one email to many people. What we're going to see with marketing automation is the ability to segment your audience, to deliver more contextually relevant messages to them. And all of this ends up being a cost-effective way to warm up your small and mid-sized customers as well as your largest customers. And as you warm them up, you can figure out what the time is to reach out to them. Here's what we've seen in terms of marketing automation and distribution. We measure this every year, and only about 15% of distributors are using marketing automation. Most are using something like a MailChimp or a Constant Contact. And there's really an opportunity to leapfrog what your competitors are doing. From our experience, marketing automation is the most efficient and effective way to communicate. And it permits a efficient and effective way of tracking leads and handing off sales qualified leads to sales rather than just saying, here's a bunch of names, go get them. Okay, so as it says there at the bottom, this is a way to warm things up before you give them to salespeople. It does result in higher close rates. So that is the effectiveness, but it also makes you and your marketing and sales team more efficient. Scott Alder.
Thank you, Jonathan. So let's do the traditional level set. What is marketing automation anyway? And a lot of what happens is marketing automation kind of gets lumped into, well, that's email marketing, right? And that absolutely is a huge part of it. You should never, and we are never going to get away from email marketing. In fact, statistics I've seen in the B2B space, the number of email records and is just growing. In fact, the number I saw recently by 2020 is 2.8 billion new emails. So email is not going away and is absolutely something that you should be paying attention to. But marketing automation goes so much further than that. It's taking a bunch of different technologies, if you will. The idea of, for example, like web tracking, simply understanding who's on your website and how are they interacting with your digital brand. And the idea, like Jonathan had said earlier, is, nurturing these leads, bringing them to the point that they're ready for a sales call. Social. it's becoming more and more relevant. And depending on the industry, it can be more active and it can be more useful. But don't discount taking a look at social. Twitter is obviously one. LinkedIn, fantastic way to get your message across. And again, it's grabbing all this disparate bits of information and bringing them in together. And really, at the end of the day, put really simply, marketing automation is getting the right message to the right person at the right time. And Scott, if you want to advance the slide to the next one. Can we advance, Scott? Perfect.
Yeah, I'll apologize. When I advance, there is a little bit of a delay there, so hopefully you guys can bear with us.
Not a problem. So here's what's interesting too. So how your customer is getting to you and how they're discovering you has changed over time. I mean, I use the phrase, we used to hold the keys to the kingdom, as it were. And what would happen is, for them to get information on the product, they had to call in and speak to you. And so all the information was held by you. But what we're starting to see now, 78% of your customers are starting the buying process with a web search. And then, 50% of them, half of them are turning to their peers for reviews. What are you using? Have you found something that's working? So if we take a look at Ben and Beth here, we're seeing two completely different tracks. And this is something that you need to be aware of. If we look at Ben, he goes in and he takes a look at product pages. And on the left side of the screen, we use the phrase attract, capture, nurture, convert, and expand. So in the attraction phase, Ben's taking a look at some product pages and he registers for a webinar like this. And, he does some work with peers on LinkedIn. Beth, on the other hand, she downloads an ebook because she wants to be able to review the content at her time and in her convenience. And then she gets to follow-up email, and they do eventually, in the nurture phase, they start capturing and getting some phone calls from salespeople, which is great because at that point, we've got a good digital footprint of what they're looking at and what they're interested in. But at the end of the day, as we see both of them eventually become customers, how they became customers, two completely different paths. And that's something that marketing automation can help you understand is, where are these people interacting? How they're telling you by their actions, how do they want to be engaged with you? So if you want to go ahead and advance that one over to the next slide, Scott. Again, understanding this buying journey has changed so substantially over time. It's critical for you to understand to be effective. So on a platform like Acton, we take a look at our website prospector, and all we're doing is from an unknown entity, we're able to track back and do a reverse IP lookup and find out where are these people coming from. So we can start seeing, how are they coming to you? Are they doing Google searches? We can, from a geography standpoint, we can start understanding where are they coming in. So we're capturing this and we're consistently reporting this information out to you so that it's not a surprise of where they're actually viewing and coming from. And if we go to the next slide then, Scott. And this is gold information to have, because once a prospect converts, and a conversion just basically means they give you something about themselves, a name and an email, that we can back associate. So for example, Will previously was obviously an unknown prospect. We had no idea who he was, but at some point in time, he gave us some information about himself by filling out a form, or if we sent out a email off of a list that we may have bought, and he clicked into it. All his previous activity that was heretofore unknown is now associated, and we can start seeing, when we drill into very detailed bits of information, where has he been on our website? What type of email is he looking at? And how is he interacting? How is he telling us that he is warmed up enough to actually be ready. And so, Scott, if we take a look at the next page here, we'll take a look at what Will's actual activities have been. And why this is important is, from a salesperson's perspective, I have a very, very warm idea of what Will is interested in and what type of conversation I need to be able to have with him. So, if I look at this one, I can see he's visited a number of our landing pages. He's actually visiting us on our website, and I'm actually able to see, again, where is he actually going. So I'm, from a salesperson's perspective, I suddenly get this, okay, I know he's just not, clicking around for X, Y, and Z, but rather when I make a phone call to him, I've got a really, really good idea of what I need to talk about in advance. And if we go ahead and advance up to the next one, Scott, one of the pieces that is really helpful to do for getting a marketing team and the sales team in line is a simple concept called lead scoring. And what lead scoring is, very, very flexible. It's just assigning value to certain activities. So, for example, just because you send somebody a message, it doesn't count for anything, right? Or maybe within your organization, it does count for something because that's not something you've really done in the past. So the flexibility within a platform like Acton is simply just highlight that score with marketing and change it to a 1. And maybe you want to give value to open a message, but what's happening is, as the prospect or your customer, never forget about your customer, because they're telling you how they're interacting as well. Maybe they're looking for a new product set that's complementary to what you sold them in the past. But what's happening is, we're taking all these scores, adding them up, and getting to the point where it's saying, okay, once we have this bit of information and they've reached a lead score of, arbitrary number of, say, 40, this is what is now qualified to send over to the sales team, because they've reached a threshold. Their digital footprint is saying, I'm ready to get a phone call, or I'm ready to get some other interaction with you. And Scott, if we can go ahead and fast forward over to the next frame, talk real quickly just about some ideas of nurturing, and how within Acton, super easy to set up some nurturing campaigns. Perfect. And Scott, we chatted earlier, and I think you had some really, really good insight into some nurturing pieces.
Right. Well, it's funny. The nurturing your prospect database is certainly a passion of mine, having been in the marketing space for more than a couple decades now. And the one thing that, if you ever ask people on my team, on my marketing team, about things I say around the office, they'll often hear me say that marketing is very much like dating or courtship, right? You would never, I would think, if you're on the call today, how many of you showed up on a first date with somebody with a wedding ring in hand, right? You just don't do that. That's not a good strategy for success, right? Now, maybe in the B2C space, business consumer space, there's impulsive buying and such, right? But in the business to business space, we try to develop trusted relationships. So that requires engaging with people often, with useful information. When you're on a date, you don't sit there and just talk about yourself all night and then say, hey, you want to come back to my place, right? You're kind of getting to know the person. You're trying to build a level of trust. You're trying to show mutual interest. Marketing's the same way, and that's why marketing automation is so critical, and setting up nurture tracks like this is so critical, because, hey, listen, if I'm trying to court 1 or 2 people, I could probably do that manually. But if I'm trying to court hundreds or thousands of people or businesses, you need marketing automation to do that, right? And to be engaged with people over a long period of time, sometimes 1-2 months, sometimes 6 to 12 months, right? But to have that kind of nurture track set up where you can get to know them, build trust, so that when it's finally right and the people are ready, when it's time to go for the home run, you're not premature in that. You've already developed that relationship. So Just an analogy I like to use, but I think it's very relevant in our B2B marketing space.
Absolutely, Scott. Completely agree with you on that one. I like that phrase too, and one that I use is, just because your customer has downloaded a white paper doesn't mean that they're anywhere ready to buy. Kind of dovetailing on what you'd said earlier, Scott. The prospect is just trying to figure out whether you're dating. The salesperson is asking you to get married. Boy, if you ever want to see unsubscribes or elbows and heels of your prospects as they run the other way, that's the way that you see it. So, using a nurture program is a great way to, we've used the phrase earlier, warm up your customer, or keep in regular cadence with them and provide them, based on their actions and their behaviors, serve them up relevant information and helpful bits of that same type of information. So one of the things that we want to look at too is, as you're building out and finishing off 2017, if you're on a calendar year cycle, what are some of the areas that are most critical for you in driving growth? And this is a slide that we use quite often because it really resonates with a number of different groups and showing how a marketing automation platform is going to bring all this together. We use the phrase brand demand and expand. So, if we take a look at the attract phase, if this is the phase that you're in, no problem. And all you're trying to do is just, for example, you're just looking to increase your brand recognition. So you're getting your blogs out there, or your tweets, or fill in the blank of what you're trying to do to leave a breadcrumb to you when your prospect or your existing customer figures out that they've got a problem or a pain that they need to solve. And then, as you move through the capture phase, driving the sufficient, the marketing qualified leads. I mean, that's huge. That's something that absolutely needs to happen. And as they move into the nurture phase of that, like Scott said, you're educating them and you're building the trust with them. And then when that actually is a conversion over, man, you are, if you look at the middle thing right here, empowering your sales to have the right conversation with the right people. Can't emphasize that enough, because if we remember back to the prospector, where we were capturing all this information and activity and seeing how and where and when they're involved with your brand, bringing that over to the sales team is so strategic because they do end up with faster sales cycles because they're very specific and strategic in their conversations. And Scott, I'm sure you'd agree with this one too. A marketer's work is never done, because once you actually get them to become a customer, what's great is you can use marketing automation to actually continue to stay in contact with them just through some of those automated campaigns. That, from being a former salesperson myself, I never loved a lead so much as from an existing customer, because they'd already been using who I worked for. I'd been talking to them, but what happens is when marketing continues to stay in that, the opportunity for upsell and cross-sell opportunities is huge. Plus, an advantage with staying in regular contact with your customer, you continue to get that increased loyalty, and customer churn goes down because you absolutely are staying in a regular contact with them, not just when you think they may or may not be ready to buy. So,
Scott, if I could jump in just a quick second, because we had a comment here that was submitted, and want to get your perspective on it. Somebody mentioned that this buying journey seems more focused on maybe regular consumers and not so much business to business. Do you have a perspective on that?
Absolutely. In fact, Acton, our primary focus is on B2B. We're certainly, as you'd mentioned earlier, Scott, the B2C is a component of that, but Acton is very much focused on B2B, and that is where a marketing automation platform works best for us. And what we've seen over the years and with some of the analyst reports, marketing automation is critical for B2B. So that is absolutely our focus, because you're trying to attract people to your business to get them to become regular customers. Now, different ideas of verticals and things like that, finance or distribution is becoming very hot in marketing automation because they're starting to understand we can connect with different companies and get them to use us all the time because we're staying in regular contact with them, and we're serving up the relevant information to them. So great comment, absolutely. But for us, we focus primarily on the business to business aspect of that.
Yeah, and you know what I'll say, and you said something very important there, which is it's about attracting people to your business. Even though we're talking about business to business, what is a business? It is a collection of people. They still have similar sensibilities as consumers, right? And we're trying to build trust over time. So I think that's important not to forget that even though the relationship is something seen as business to business, it's still people to people.
Exactly. Yeah, there's still a person at the other end of that email that you send out, and there's a group of people involved with making that buying decision. Absolutely, Scott. So real quickly, I mean, just looking at what can it do and why can it make a difference for you? With marketing automation, nurture the existing customers. Scott, I think you had a brilliant point earlier. I can probably do a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 manual campaign, maybe even as much as 1 to 10. But when you're starting to look at hundreds and thousands of businesses or people within those businesses that you need to be able to nurture, man, putting those in a automatic campaign and triggering based off of activities and behaviors, that's something that you can't do. Well, you can do it manually, and you will not get any sleep, and it becomes an extremely cumbersome process. And then because we're bringing things in like lead scoring, you're being able to identify real quickly who is the one that I need to talk to first, who's got the highest lead score that I should be, as a salesperson, absolutely involved with immediately, because they're saying, I've got a pain point, I've got a need immediately. And, because the conversations that you can have are very strategic in format, we consistently see that the sales cycles are shortened by using marketing automation. And I touched on it earlier, keeping your customers in a really competitive industry like distribution, keeping them to you, and so that you don't have to constantly be recreating the wheel is critical. So keep your customer retention high by keeping you and your company or your product top of mind. If they have a need, the first thing they're going to do is, I just got an email, or I just saw a webinar, or a post about something from the people that I'm already working with. So what's the last point here is critical as well. Figuring out which campaigns have the biggest impacts. I mean, you can run arbitrary number 10 different campaigns with a platform like Acton, but if 2 of those campaigns are resulting in 80% of your sales, fantastic intelligence to have, which means we need to go back in and recreate in a similar way these 2 campaigns that we're running that are yielding so much. I mean, going back again to the 20/80 rule, we want to recreate these campaigns and refine them down. So having something like this, everybody wants to have a better impact, right? And get bigger, faster, better sales. Marketing automation really does come into play with that.
Yeah, and Scott, I'm going to just bring up another question or comment that was made by Josh here. It's a good comment. He says, as wholesalers, we don't typically rely on the content marketing approach. It seems to be a lot of the focus here, right? And maybe we've talked about white papers or ebooks or case studies. How do you see this working in reality for B2B wholesalers? Is content marketing the only way that this kind of marketing automation works? And before you answer that, I will say, listen, content comes in different forms, and content is a very effective strategy, and it can be a cornerstone of your nurturing process. and marketing automation process. Think of I'll just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you go to their website and they will have videos on how to use certain products that they sell, right? That is content. That's a type of educational video content that you could be potentially producing and sharing with your audience as well. It's not necessarily a come buy from my business. It's offering useful information that helps educate a market and gets them thinking, hey, when I have a need here, I want to go talk to these people. But Scott, I don't know if you have a perspective on that comment.
I think, Jonathan, you were going to hop in on that one. I'll let you go.
Yeah, I was going to add that I think there's different types of content. There's corporate marketing, there's product marketing, and you can do both with marketing automation. We find when we look at marketing in general from distributors that they tend perhaps too much towards the corporate side of marketing and put less emphasis on the product marketing. Your company, you'll have to figure out which makes the most sense, but it's a great opportunity to do whichever it is that you need to do.
I agree. And Scott, I think your point earlier was well taken as well, that content is not product specific. It can be the educational video. It can be how to better use something that you've got. Just serving up the content, again, it's keeping them engaged with your brand and keeping them engaged with your sales teams. And I thought your point about using it as educational, or what if there's a recall out there, or something, an enhancement that's made, that's something you can also use that for. So really good points.
For many of you who are working with email marketing, a question is, how would I even switch to marketing automation? It might seem a bit overwhelming. Our experience in working with Act-On and with marketing automation is that there's a few steps you can take to get going and start getting a significant portion of the benefits. The first thing that needs to be done is there's like a little code that needs to be put on the footer of your homepage. And once you have that in your homepage, any pages that a user clicks on, you can start gathering this data. So you can start seeing what users are actually doing. I liken this to the nature movies where they don't know what an animal does, and then they get the GPS chip on an animal, and then suddenly there's a lot more information about the animal. They know when it wakes up, they know when it hunts. They start to see all kinds of things about that animal's behavior and patterns. And so this beacon tracking code, which should be a 5 or 10 minute effort for whoever's doing your web admin, is that first step in getting going. The next thing is taking your existing contacts from MailChimp or Vertical Response or Constant Contact, whatever you're using, putting them in a CSV file, and then loading them into Act-On. And boom, you've got a customer database to start with there. Another step beyond that would be to say, let's take what you're already doing in email marketing with an email marketing program, and let's just translate that over to Act-On. We're not trying to do anything exotic, multi-step. Just let's recreate what you were doing in those other programs. And that period could last for a month or 2 or 3 or 4 as you get comfortable creating content. By the way, creating content, at least in Act-On, is very much like working with WordPress, for those of you that are familiar with working with WordPress. Once you're familiar, then you could start looking at doing next steps, which might be the automated nurturing campaign that Scott demonstrated. It could be lead scoring. We've actually helped people set up lead scoring in just a few hours. It's that simple. Or perhaps there's some new product line that you want to get a campaign focused on. So these 4 steps are really the getting going steps, and we find that people are able to learn this in a very predictable manner. As a marketing company devoted to distribution, we've worked with a number of different marketing automation platforms, and we really believe that Act-On is the right product for a broad swath of distribution. It's a good mid-market product, and it scales well. As you can see here from the Forrester perspectives, it's in that upper quadrant. In fact, they're showing it as it compares with enterprise class platforms. Those ones from Oracle, IBM, and Marketo are really enterprise class platforms. So you're getting near enterprise class functionality in a product like Act-On. And if you look at the trend, it's been the only vendor that Forrester has included in the last 3 waves. So there's good things happening there. And then finally, we believe that Act-On is a more for a lower price kind of a positioning. You see that bottom bullet point there. The other products, even the mid-market products, such as Salesforce or HubSpot, which are fine products, they typically are 2x or more of Act-On's price. So we think it's a terrific product.
Great. Jonathan. Thank you. Scott, thank you as well. Listen, there's some great questions coming in here. We're going to get to the Q&A in about 2 minutes. One question I've had asked a number of times already is, are we going to provide a recording of the presentation or a copy of the slides afterwards? Absolutely. At the very least, everybody who has signed up will get a link to the recording of this webinar, and maybe we can PDF the slides out to you as well if you want to share it with anybody back at your business. So no fear, we will absolutely help you out there. Before we get to the Q&A, real quick, again, I mentioned there's a number of you who are Unilog customers. There are some who are not Unilog customers. So a quick plug, so you know who we are. Unilog is an all-in-one e-commerce platform for the B2B marketplace. Okay, our customers have told us we have a very powerful and yet very affordable solution, not just the e-commerce platform itself, but a lot of catalog data enrichment services around that as well. I think when you look at the challenge in the market today when it comes to e-commerce, sometimes people in the distribution market and B2B market space think of, okay, I need to launch an e-commerce site and it's just getting a shopping cart out there, plugging into my ERP and offering my catalog online. Well, there's a lot more to it than that, right? There's a lot of components that you have to consider. And when you look at some of the best in class and best in market providers or companies who provide a terrific e-commerce experience, there's a lot behind that, right? There is the CMS, which maybe you're going to somebody like Adobe for. There's the search capability, maybe the Oracle, Endeca, or somebody like that, right, is behind that. You have your shopping cart functionality. You have your PIM, your product information management, which is an essential component of a solid e-commerce offering, right? Your PIM is where the entire taxonomy is managed for your e-commerce site, and it gives you the ability to manage your accessories and alternatives and substitutes and replacement parts for your catalog, right? So the PIM is important, but maybe you have somebody else doing the PIM, right? And then you have the services and the data around that, right? So the challenge in the market is, to date, there hasn't been a really good platform that encompasses this all into one all-in-one solution. And if you don't, there's a couple downsides to this, which it can be very high cost and very high pain when you're going through an e-commerce launch to be integrating all these separate components together from different vendors. So at Unilog, we take a different approach. Is why can't our customers have all of this in a single all-in-one platform? Why can't they have a single e-commerce engine that handles all those different aspects of the PIM, the CMS, the mobile experience, the search, the shopping cart? And so what we have is a platform called Sim2, which is your e-commerce platform. And then on top of that, we provide services and data enrichment services around that as well. So we can go in and help enrich and provide additional detail around your entire product catalog. So we are purpose-built to handle the very complex catalogs with hundreds of thousands of SKUs, and provide great content that you can serve up via our e-commerce platform. Okay, and then it doesn't stop there, right? We believe in an API-first commerce platform, an API-first approach, where we've already built many integrations with the leading ERP vendors in the distribution space and in the B2B space, whether it's somebody like an Infor or Epicor Eclipse, Epicor Profit 21, right? SAP, DDI systems. So it's the ERP integrations. It's the integrations with the shipping carriers, with social media sites, with marketplaces like Amazon, BI solutions, your CRM platform, right? All of that, because we have an open API, we've built integrations into those different platforms. So you get that 360-degree view of your business, your customers, and all the transactions that are happening online. Okay, so that's just a really high-level overview of Unilog in case you're not familiar. But I do want to get to the Q&A portion here because, as I said, there are some great questions coming in. And let me see here, because the first one has to do with email marketing. And I'll try to paraphrase here, guys. The question is, you know, ISPs continue to crack down on email and spam. And you know, obviously, email communications can be a very big part of a marketing automation program and campaign. So what is a marketer to do, right? Because we have, as a business, we have this contacts, a database of contacts that we market to, and many of them have not been engaging with us that much. And we feel like we have something relevant to say, but if they don't engage with you over a period of time, what do you do, and how do you keep it relevant? And listen, before I turn this over to Jonathan and Scott and others, I'll give you my perspective. I'm actually going through this process right now here at Unilog. I joined the company not too long ago, and we're looking at our database. And there are a lot of contacts out there that we have that we believe are valid contacts. The emails don't hard bounce, but they may not engage with us over a period of 6 to 12 months. I'm kind of the belief if you have somebody who, 12, 16 months has not engaged with any of your attempts, you have to be comfortable with letting that contact go. Or maybe you put them into a very slow drip campaign to try to resurrect them with something of interest. But, I'll go back to the dating analogy. If you're that person who's constantly going for the prom queen and she keeps saying, no, 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 I don't want to go out on a date with you, you're kind of foolish to keep asking in most cases over and over and over again and bothering the person, right? So we have to get comfortable as marketers saying, listen, let me just focus on the people who are engaged and how can I provide a better experience and better information and education for them and try to develop that relationship. Jonathan, I don't know if you have a take on that.
Well, I think there's simple things that you can do in terms of with the crackdown that's happening. You can do a list cleanse to make sure that you are sending to good emails. And that is an upward spiral because it affects the sender reputation that you create as a marketer. And that's going to make it less likely that you are going to be cracked down upon by the powers that be. But the second thing is that one of the benefits of marketing automation is you are almost by definition sending to smaller lists. You're sending more relevant targeted email. So because of that, you're less likely to offend somebody with content that's irrelevant who then reports you. And on the upside, you're more likely to delight somebody with the content that you're sharing because you've created segmented content.
Jonathan, I completely agree with that. One of the things that we really didn't speak to on some of those, because marketing automation is incredibly powerful. And, one of the things that you can do, like you just mentioned, is you can break down your segments. You can break them down any number of different ways, and it can be very, very complex or very, very simple. I mean, simple is, everybody in the state of Georgia. Complex could be everybody in the state of Georgia who has visited our website within the last 90 days and has shown an interest in XYZ. Send them a targeted email based off of this. Scott, I think you're exactly right. If they're not engaging with you over the last 6 to 12 months, yeah, sometimes it's time to let them go until they tell you in some way, shape, or form that they're interested again. And to Jonathan's point, going through an email list cleanse, making sure that you're not hitting spam traps is something that is of incredible value. Because what you're doing is you're actually getting delivered to the inbox rather than to the spam folder. And Acton has a very clean reputation, and that's something that we work on we have a whole deliverability team, making sure that we are actually getting to the inbox and not into the spam. And, you know, if people aren't engaging with you, you know, I go old school on them. Send them a postcard or a handwritten note. And once you get that response back, then you can start putting them into an email campaign. But I think the other thing that was mentioned is serving up relevant content. I get on these email lists that the content that's being served up to me, I have no interest in whatsoever. And I just unsubscribe as quickly as possible. But the ones that do get my attention are the ones that are sending information to me based on my activity. So yeah, that's paying attention. And you know, with the especially up in Canada with the canned spam laws, very, very critical to pay attention to those, because there are some very serious teeth behind those laws. America, we don't have quite so much, but yeah, great question on that.
Yeah, there's a couple questions that came through real quick. I want to get through some of these. Does Unilog offer a seamless integration between Act-On and the SIM2 platform? As I mentioned before, we do have an open API approach, so we certainly can. We do not have, I'll be honest, we do not have something that's a productized integration, but we have begun conversations there with Scott and others about that.
We
so
absolutely have.
We can certainly follow up with you. Yes, we have. But that open API does make that possible. So here's a question for you, guys.
Scott, I would add one more thing, which is the integration is not a get IT involved 6-month project. You get the tracking code on your website. That's the biggest part of the integration you will do, and that will take 5 or 10 minutes. The integration that you are referring to in terms of the discussion between Unilog and Act-On, that's a deeper integration that the vast majority of you would probably not be using at this point in time. Just getting that beacon on, you've got the integration done.
Yep. Just like adding code for Google Analytics or something like that. That's a good point.
Exactly.
There was a question here. On average, how much time would a typical distributor dedicate to marketing automation to be successful? It's a loaded question, I guess, but what do you think, Jonathan?
It probably depends on the size of the distributor, size of your list. We like to see somewhere between a quarter and, let's say, 2/3 time devoted to email marketing, marketing automation, search. For the larger companies, it's going to be more like 2/3 or even a full-time person. For the smaller companies, it might be a quarter time. As you're just getting going, it might be a quarter time.
Well, and the advantage of the
a bit about marketing
platform,
automation. Yep.
I was just going to say the advantage of a platform like Act-On is that it's so intuitive, and the learning curve is not huge. I mean, I use the phrase the last time I actually coded, I was carrying a stack of cards over to a compiler and praying that something had not slipped out of order so that my program would not run.
Scott, you're giving away your age.
Well, I've worked hard for those gray hairs. But I don't code in HTML, but I can make Act-On work very quickly, very efficiently. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is on a demo call or something like that, I'll actually just do an ad hoc email campaign on the fly to show how easy it is to actually make Act-On work. So, when you put the nurturing campaigns in place with that automated program, that it's not exactly Ronco set it and forget it, but in a lot of ways, once you get that drip campaign and the nurturing campaigns and all those automated programs set up, it becomes really easy to use, and you get the huge intelligence behind it as well. So that's my input on that.
Great. There's a question here, and we touched on this a little bit, but Cecilia was wondering, people often talk about marketing automation as a platform that operates on its own. Can you talk about how it plays in conjunction with your CRM, your website analytics, tracking packages, and so forth?
Scott, you want to take that?
Yeah, I was going to say I can take that one. So the integration that we have within CRM is very seamless. We've got some native integrations between Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, Sugar, Infor. It's a native integration, which means that there's no third party sitting in between trying to pass information back and forth. So what's happening is everything that's being done within Acton is synced over and shows up in the Infor platform, for example, and vice versa. Whatever happens in Infor is actually synced over into Acton. So critical to be able to use that. Again, we, like Scott was mentioning, our APIs are open, so we can, if it's not a native connection, we can probably figure out a way to get your MA platform, marketing automation platform, syncing over to your database or to your CRM. So we've done some very interesting integrations with some very homegrown CRMs that works. So, but it's very seamless with the ones that are the native ones, and to get that information back and forth, it certainly Acton can be a standalone platform if you want it to act that way. But where we see the best value is when it actually is integrated within a CRM, because that information going back and forth that sales can see and marketing can see is of utmost importance. Jonathan, did you have any other comments on that one?
Just a quick thing. I know that many distributors are getting going with CRM at various levels, and driving utilization of CRM is not a simple thing. Having the information available from Acton in CRM is a draw for somebody to start using the CRM more frequently.
All right, there are a few more questions, but we're coming up on the top of the hour. I do want to be respectful of everybody's time, so we're going to do our best to follow up afterwards. Listen, if anybody has questions they'd like to ask of us, please reach out to us. You see the website domain names there. We'd be happy to address any questions you have. I hope you found this valuable today. Both Jonathan, Scott, I appreciate your guys' time and efforts and your thoughts and perspective. I hope this was useful. It's certainly, I see a lot of interest here on the call today, just based off the number of comments and questions alone. So it's great to hear of distributors and others in the B2B marketplace being this engaged and focused on the strategy of marketing automation. With that, we will, I'm sorry, did you have a final thought, Jonathan?
Thanks for including us, Scott.
Absolutely, I agree.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. We will get this recording out by tomorrow, I believe, end of day tomorrow, so you can share it with others at your business. In the meantime, thanks for engaging with us, and we look forward to chatting with you guys again. Take care, everybody.
Sounds great. Thanks all.